chant? Shall we chant?
Just a wee bit.
Shall we chant a wee bit? I may eat in front of you, I apologize, but just tell me if you're going to take a picture, and I will obviously chew food. Can we make that? No, not really.
Or just take a bigger bite.
Oh,
Yeah,
Phil
we
has
want the
just a lot of
candid,
pictures,
embarrassing
so.
None of those, oh yeah, because I have none of those already out there probably.
I figured we could just start with you telling these folks a little bit about yourself and what you do for the show, just to fill them in the gaps, and then we'll go to questions.
Yeah, my name's Mitch Larson, I'm a writer. Okay, I'm aiming keeping it. I'm Nicole Oliver, and I voiced Princess Celestia and Cheerlilee and a bunch of other little ponies over the years that the fans are way better at reminding me than I can remember, unfortunately. Yeah, so I've been in the business, as they say, for over 20 years. I do a lot of work on camera as well as voice acting. I'm married. My husband is here, roaming around somewhere. And I have 2 boys, which certainly makes the maternal characters easy to play, especially when I have to be yelling. I'm really good at that. And yeah, I went back to school a few years ago. I got my master's in communications, so I'm pretty proud of that. It's a little fact I don't think too many people know about me. And yeah, and I'm really thrilled to be here at BronyCon. I haven't missed one, so that's the basics about me.
All right. Well, I'm just going to throw it out the questions for
I
you
love
guys.
it. Okay,
We
cool.
have about
Just real
40
quick,
minutes
where did you go
left.
to school for your master's?
For my master's, I went to Royal Roads University in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. And I did my undergrad, or my first degree at York University in Toronto. And that was a Bachelor of Fine Arts in theater. My parents said I had to have a degree if I was going to be an actor, so I'd have something to fall back on.
So you got a degree in acting.
Yeah, and then I went back and got my second one. Much later in life, it was always, I love learning. I love the fact that in school, when you work really hard, you get an A. There's something tangible you can hold on to for your efforts. Whereas in the career path I've chosen, it doesn't matter how talented or great you are. It's a real struggle sometimes to feel validated or to feel intelligent in this business, unfortunately sometimes for women. So I really love going back to school. My plan is to get my PhD when I can save $100,000 to go take it. So, yeah.
Will that also be in communication?
Probably sociology, PhD in sociology. I'm interested in gender studies, men and women, how female identity in particular, maternal identity, how it shifts over the years, how it's perceived. So that's kind of my area of interest.
Yeah, coming from the angle of gender studies and things, could you say some of the problems a woman could face in this industry?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, it's been over the ages, it's always been pretty apparent that the entertainment industry is not necessarily kind to women. There's a lot of pressures about your physicality and how you should look. So I think that's one of the reasons I love doing voice work, because it didn't matter what I looked like. It really, I think, is the one area of the business that is truly based on talent, right? You can I get hired to do an old woman's voice, or a little girl's voice, or a little boy's voice, or a flowy, lovely princess voice, right? So it doesn't matter what I look like. And that's great, and it's very freeing. And also with voiceover work, I found it was really great to get my comedy chops up. You get paid to be an idiot, really, like a fun-filled idiot, and just put yourself out there, and you don't have a lot of opportunities for that. And so I know it's really helped my comedic work on film, certainly doing the cartoons. But it's tough for women. I mean, there's more men parts. I mean, I'm not making that up. You can just look at any cartoon or any movie and see that women are usually relegated to the mothers or the girlfriends, or and in cartoons, it's really not much different. There's 5 or 6 or 7 men parts, boy parts, and there's 1 or 2 girl parts. And yeah.
You seem to share a lot of common ground with Lauren Faust on that point, because she's written about when she wrote the show that she was able to push back against that. I mean, do you think do you think the show's been a success in that?
Oh, absolutely. The show's been a huge success in that. I mean, just in challenging people's stereotypes and perceptions, right? And I think one thing it's done is it's really highlighted to everyone, how quick we are to fall back into those kind of preconceived notions of what should be right and what is wrong. It's based on, I don't know whether it's our DNA or our past, And so the show, what it does do is it actually, I think, makes most people question themselves to try and understand why they feel the way they do about things and to challenge that. And certainly the show challenges that. And I don't think, as she says, Lauren said, which really resonated with me, why should girls like pink? Why should boys like blue? Who cares? They like a color, that's great, right? They can talk about it and celebrate it, that's what matters.
And following up on that, have you actually seen anything behind the scenes that kind of is, Pony's success has started
Yeah.
having shockwaves through
In my own,
other
in my
producers?
kids, no, well, I was gonna say, in my real life, in my kids' school, there was a boy who was kind of labeled a bully and a bit of a misfit, and he came up to me last year and kind of said, "Are you Nicole Oliver?" I said, "Yes." "Do you voice Princess Celestia?" "Yes." And he said, "I'm a brony and I'm really trying to change." And I went, wow. So we talked for a little bit, and that kid is now volunteering at the school, babysitting younger grades, and he's really making some really great choices. And I think for him, the show allows and teaches their strength in numbers, right? You're better when you have friends, to love yourself, all those really great things that I don't know if as parents we really teach our kids as much as we should these days, right? We're just also busy. Not that we don't want to, but we're just also busy. So it kind of gets back to a simpler time, I think.
Going back to your statement that you were studying the idea of sociology in these gender issues.
Yes, yeah.
I know that throughout history, especially in the United States, this kind of idea of social and gender roles has been changing over time. I don't think most people realize that. They think it's like a permanent aspect, whether it be frontier life or whether it be even the aristocratic elites
Yeah.
having their children mainly dressed as women, essentially, or as girls, I should say.
Yeah.
What do you think, do you think that bronies are kind of like another shift in the sociological aspect of American culture as it goes through different phases of social roles and gender roles?
Wow, that's a really great question. I mean, I think what the brony culture allows is for people to be proud to celebrate who they are and to understand their own costume, right? Their own, and to wear that with pride and to be able to understand how it weaves into the fabric of society, right? There's a place for everybody. So I think certainly, Trekkie fans did it long before bronies did. There's been always a history, and certainly to do, I think more with television than film, the fan base is really getting together and challenging, mores and cultural realities.
Do you think that this is just one aspect of our current society's push towards another change in how we?
Well, I
view
sure
those
hope
roles?
so. I find, I'm Canadian, I don't live in the States.
Right.
I do get very, this is a massive generalization, but I do find that in my country, we're a little bit more tolerant of people based on, it doesn't seem to be the judgment about religious choice or cultural belief that seems to be so apparent here in the States. You see it in the media. That's not what I've observed. It's in the media, right? You can see how people are judged and put into all these little boxes, and I think it makes people feel safe, but it also, I think it's really, it's sad in a way, because in Canada we have what's called a mosaic, right? You guys have the melting pot. So the mosaic is saying that all those little pieces together make up that nice, pretty picture. And they don't always get along. I'm not saying it's rosy, but in order to see the whole, you need all those tiles in there, all those little pieces. Whereas the melting pot idea is you all go into the pot and you all melt together and blend. So I kind of like the idea that you can maintain your autonomy and still be part of a larger group, right? Where there's place for everyone.
I wondered if we could go back to female parts in cartoons.
Yeah, sure.
If we turn specifically, what do you feel about your part of Celestia as a cartoon character from a gender perspective? Is she a typical?
I don't think she's, she fits the maternal, the matriarch kind of archetype, right? That iconic kind of mother figure. Certainly, she's that part. But what I think is different is that you know, my character asks for Twilight or anyone to write a letter about what they've learned, I'm not telling them how to learn it. We provide opportunities for them to explore on their own and to decide what the lesson is from that. And 5 people may have different lessons, and the thing I love about Celestia, which is how I try and parent my kids, is if that's how you're feeling that day and that's your lesson, there's no right or wrong. Take that and then keep building on that. And that's what I think, I hope anyway, with my kids, are giving them a rich character, you know, solid backbone.
Kind of going a little off of that, friendship is magic has often been described as, you know, catching lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And since pretty much everyone involved on it has worked on so many other shows, what do you feel, you know, do you have any idea why you think it catalyzed, in this case, to explode basically the way it did?
The anti-bullying movement's really been catching on since about 2007, 8, right? So I don't think there's any, I think there's a little bit of a parallel there in terms of when the show came along. I think it spoke to a situation that really wasn't being dealt with in my country or your country, or, you know. So I think in some ways it provided, again, that idea that we all belong, and that when we're all together, we're stronger in numbers, and to use our voices, not yell, right, but to use our voices strongly to get what we want. Certainly the show, I mean, the thing I love about the show from a cartoon perspective is it's kind of reversed, right? It's tons of female characters with just a few male characters thrown in there from time to time. Love the characters. And so I love being able to walk into a room and work with a bunch of my peers. You know, usually there's only 1 or 2 of us on the show, and so that's pretty amazing. Yeah, did that sort of answer your question?
I mean, kind of. I was also wondering, I mean, you mentioned kind of that, or rather, I think what I took away from that is you were sort of saying that it's a right place, right time situation, that there was a...
Yeah, I think it was a right place, right time. I think it's just one of those situations that maybe in 20 years you could go back and somebody smarter than all of us will analyze it and see that actually this lined up and that happened and that is why it became this thing. But I think as soon as you try and figure out why something is successful, it's the kiss of death, right? It is magical. It is growing. I mean, there's a whole whack of fans today in the VA panel that are here for their first time. This is their first convention. And certainly the fan base is it's men and women, boys and girls, you know, babies all the way up to people in their 60s and 70s who are also grandparents who are loving the show. And so I don't know whether it's also maybe a callback to try to get back to some of the simple things in life too. So I know a lot of families are sitting together and watching the show together. I think that's pretty cool, you know, that. So I think, yeah, it is lightning in a bottle. It's a bunch of things that'll come back to it, but I think we're all kind of craving for, I mean, heck, I'd love to have 5 pony friends all the time, right? That I can call up and that have my back, right? Yeah.
Going back to the ponies as gender studies, Celestia, the, you know, mostly female cast, do you find that the LGBT community is kind of represented as well, not directly through the show, but through how the characters interact with themselves and others?
I mean, I just really think I think anybody, one of the magical things about the show is that anyone, no matter how they identify themselves, when they watch the program, they see a bit of themselves reflected back. So I don't know if the writers intentionally went and did that, right? But again, it's just one of those things where however you choose to define yourself, however you choose to portray yourself, if you look at that show, there'll be something that will speak back to you, that'll let you relate to it. And I wouldn't want to try and pin it down any more than that. I think that would, you know, I don't think it was written for the LGBT community. I don't think it wasn't written. It was just a show that was trying to say, when we're all together and we're ourselves and we celebrate the good and the bad, it's magical. It's fantastic. Really simple, right? But you know, I think we could all do with a little bit more simplicity in our life.
Question about getting into character for
Sure.
Celestia.
Yeah.
How You mentioned that she's a matriarchal type of character, archetype like that. What do you use as inspiration for getting into that character?
I just think about my kids. It's real easy, I just think about my boys. I have a locket I wear a lot, it's got their photos in it. I have some jewelry with their birth date and stuff. And I have dog tags actually with their names and birth dates, because I feel like I went to war to give birth to them.
Nice.
They're both almost 10 pounds each, so they're big boys. So, yeah, my kids, I just think about my boys, and it's pretty easy to get to that place. But I don't want it to be patronizing or anything, right? It's just.
What are your first impressions of this con compared to some of the other ones you've experienced before? Because I know this isn't, certainly not your first con,
Yeah.
for a pony or otherwise.
Way more children, way more families, for sure. Way more groups of people like really traveling with their support, you know? It's really cool. It's big, but I don't think it's too big. I think it's great, and I think probably one of the things I would like to see as it gets bigger is we allow more time for fan questions, because I think really that's, for me, what it's about is, when I sign the autographs, I try and take time to actually hear people's stories, and I want to honor that, right? A lot of people have worked extra shifts and done all sorts of stuff to save so they could come out here to celebrate something that's impacted their life, and I really want to try and honor that. So I think there's a sense of that too. And it's big, but I don't feel it's too big. Lots of singing everywhere. Yeah.
You've made a lot of, I think, very nice philosophical points in just this conversation here. I would like to know if you think that if it were a different project, for instance, if you had any other projects you're on with similar strong female characters, etc., if we would be sitting here having the same conversation about that, had it exploded, or do you think Friendship is Magic is more unique in that regard?
I think Friendship, I mean, I have a couple of other shows I'm on Max Steel, on Disney XD. I do voice of Zoe Trent on Littlest Pet Shop, which is also a Hasbro property. And she's a pretty funky female character. I quite enjoy playing her, she's fun. But I'm starting to get some fan interest from Littlest Pet Shop, but that's because a lot of it's been My Little Pony fans that have, because there's similar voice actors, are watching it out of loyalty or celebrating us, right? And
That's why I started watching.
You know, so which is great. So I don't know if the show would have done that on its own. It's just really, I think. I don't want to try and say why I think it is doing what it is. It boggles my mind. It's humbling. My comments I make at the panel are very sincere. It's very humbling walking around here and meeting everybody and to see the impact. And, you know, it's great. My kids watch the show. They love it. They love Discord. You know, they think Discord's pretty cool. And my kids came with me to Equestria LA, and they sat with me and talked to a lot of people. And they just like, they said, everyone seems like a really cool bunch of people. I said, yeah, it's a really cool fandom. So, yeah.
Do you think that one of the reasons that the show has such a great success is that the lessons about friendship are really universal, it can speak to anyone, and that the fact that today the world can seem so harsh and sometimes quite dark, but we tend to forget, in fact, these lessons, that the show has something refreshing about these ideas, the fact that you don't have to use violence to solve a problem, and that you can listen at least to other people before going straight on and do something wrong.
I do think, I mean, you know, the word friend has become a verb, right? We friend people. It's a noun. You're my friend. To make a friend is a lot of different verbs involved, and just, you know. So I find that maybe the idea that it's the interplay, you know, that idea of friendship. What does friendship really mean? I mean, if you asked yourself, I mean, we'd probably come up with, probably 15 different reasons, right? Or different explanations for what friendship is, what makes a good friend. But no one's wrong, you're all right. And so, I know the show has allowed a lot of parents to have some really great chats with their kids, and I've heard that the autistic community uses the show. It helps with teachable moments, simple emotional teachable moments about how to interact with people, social lessons and stuff that I really don't think we teach kids anymore. You know, I really don't. Sorry to say that, but yeah.
Excuse me, just a clarification, what communities is it? I didn't catch that.
The autistic, autism society. I know that a lot of families with children who are on the spectrum have come up to me and spoken to me saying how the show, their children, if they're on the spectrum, it helps them focus. It's single teachable moments, so it kind of, and I don't think that was the writers, like, I don't think there was anyone on staff that was like, we're gonna write this show and it's gonna speak to this community, right? It's just one of those things because it's simple, right? It's simple. And we're all about complicated and explosions and blowing stuff up and all the rest of it. But the simple stuff does still work. We just have to trust in it a little more. You don't need all the razzmatazz. Yeah.
I have a question specifically with military personnel.
Mhm.
I know that there were, for a while there were a lot of people that were actually sending into something that they presented to Lauren Faust called Letters to Celestia. I was wondering if you had heard of any that had been sent to you or anything like that.
I have received a couple of letters from fans written to me, but nothing from the military community, unfortunately.
You want some?
I'd love some.
Okay, I'll send your way.
I'd love them, yeah.
Okay.
My contact some.
Noted.
I think it's great. You know, I mean, it's that idea of, like I'm trying to tell my kids, if you just tell me the truth, I won't get angry, right? Maybe disappointed, we'll work through it, but I'm not gonna get angry with you. And the idea, again, that somebody's taking the time to put their thoughts and use the pen to write it out or the keyboard to write it out. Usually we just blurt stuff out in 140 characters and press send and walk away. But I find what the letters do, it actually allows a chance for people to think. I got a picture during the VA panel today, and on it was a letter to me, how this gentleman, the show taught him he was afraid to tell his parents he wanted to come here because he thought he would be judged. And when he told his parents he wanted to come here, his parents said, sure, can I drive you? And it taught him to not always assume what the ending is going to be or that the ending is going to be worse, and to have the courage to ask for what he wants, because had he not asked, he wouldn't have been there, and he wouldn't have been, he said, then able to give me this and say these things. So that's cool, right?
A bit of an odd question, but I've been to the 3 BronyCons, you've been at every panel, and I've noticed that you, at any given con where there's fan questions, you're going to run into people who have a little trouble getting their thought out, or, you know, just an odd situation. You seem to be very good at handling those, finding like little, you and Kathy in particular, of like finding that. Is that something that just comes naturally to you? Have you gotten better through the con years of like being able to handle those somewhat awkward situations?
I just think it's always just been part of my personality. I've always been the one that, you know, if I see somebody in trouble, I'll go ask if I can help. That's just always kind of how I was raised. And, you know, I was bullied as a kid, quite severely. So if I see someone who is struggling or something, it kind of reminds me sometimes of some situations I was in. And you sit patiently and wait. Yeah, so, and I think also being a parent teaches you a bucket load of patience, and it teaches you that it's not about you. I mean, you want a real solid lesson in learning that it's not about you. I have a couple of kids. I mean, for me, that's really, for other people, they don't maybe need to walk down that path, and that's cool. But for me, that's, I think, what's really helped solidify that part of my character.
Many people, including staff members, have expressed an interest in a spin-off series showcasing the adventures of a younger Celestia and Luna.
Oh, cool.
Would you be interested in working on a show like that?
Of course. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're season 3 now, right? That's what's airing?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Any scenarios that ran through your mind when I told you that?
Yeah, lots. I'd love to see, you know, I think the pre-story is really interesting. It's obviously it's what the whole series is based on, right there. But I think it'd be cool, even if in a couple of episodes, to have that kind of a sense of who they were before, right? Yeah, I mean, because as an actor, I always try and make up my backstory, just so, you know, why am I asking this way? You, okay, it would be, okay, so that means that.
Oh, so you have your own headcanon.
You kind of, yeah, you have to kind of have your own little, even when you work on camera, right? The movie starts at a certain point, but you always have what we call enacting your moment before. What happens before you open the door? Why do you come in the room all angry? There was a whole scene that the audience just didn't see. So as an actor, one of the ways I like to work is I always want to fill in those blanks, but that's very personal reasons.
Talking about other spin-off or project, do you think there is something that you personally like to change about Celestia? Something you like to add, remove, or change?
I would like to see her sense of humor more. I think she's got a sense of humor. So I'd like to see that a little more. And hopefully maybe that can be revealed a bit now that it's not so important for her to be always, you know, the princess power is spreading out a little bit, right? So maybe she can chill out a bit.
On that topic, do you, as a voice actor, get a chance to talk with the creators of the show, like the writers and the artists and stuff like that that work at DHX?
The cons have actually really brought together people like Megan McCarthy and you know us, and we've had chances to socialize and actually go, hey, what about? And you know, it was at a con not too long ago that Megan came up to me and said, psst, psst, psst. And I went, oh, okay, that's cool. Well, how about psst, psst, psst? She went, oh, okay, and that came to pass. And I don't know if that, which you'll see at some point. And I don't know if that would have happened had we not had you know, our work relationship be to a point where we could go to each other, right? Yeah.
And as a follow-up, do you think that this has been a beneficial aspect to this show in particular, as opposed to the other shows you've worked on before?
I think it is. I mean, I'm used to a collaborative environment when you work on camera. You work very closely with your director and your DP, and you have to have a lot of trust out there and stuff like that. So I'm quite used to, you know, you go read through and you'll say to the writer, I don't think my character would talk this way, and all that kind of stuff. On animation, sometimes you can. Sometimes I do, because I've been doing this for so long. I'm not, I feel I can ask in a respectful way that's not going to insult anyone. And find, you know, I can have those conversations with people I collaborate with, but I think that's something that's come along the longer I've been in the business and the more comfortable I am with myself and my place in the business is bringing something to the table too, you know? Do you have a question?
Yeah, it was, oh God, I can't remember now. No, it was more, but you sort of answered it, how like the cons can work like brainstorming sessions or help your working relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm meeting people that I wouldn't get a chance to meet and interacting in very social circumstances and situations, you know, like go for a drink with Jason Thiessen. You know, Jason's a great guy, he's got a baby, we're not gonna hang out, but you know, if we're here, we'll have a talk, and talks about life, and then they get to know you, and they get to know, sure.
Sorry.
Who are you looking for?
I'm just trying to register in the press room.
Oh, register in the press room? That's, this gentleman will come out and tell you where to go for that. Yeah. No problem.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Well handled.
You need us to guard the doors, we're military.
So, yeah, I think the concepts have not only created a sense of community with the fans, but for those of us working on it, it's provided a sense of community in a very fluid workplace usually, right? Yeah.
Bit of a silly question, but I asked this to Peter New back at TrodCon, and the crowd ended up loving it. So the question I asked was, if, in his case, Big Macintosh, so for your Celestia or Cheerlilee, either one, were in a 1980s coming-of-age movie.
Yeah.
And obviously the adult voice is doing the voiceover,
Yeah.
the narration.
Yeah.
What would the title be, and what would the plot be?
Oh my God. I love 80s music and 80s cinema. And it would have to be directed by John Hughes. That is like, without a doubt. And I think let's say Celestia would basically be pretty in pink, and Cheerlilee, well, actually, no, I think Cheerlilee would be pretty in pink. Celestia would be the Breakfast Club.
Is she gonna be, or quote, of the 5 Breakfast Club members then, which role is she at the very beginning?
I gotta be Molly Ringwald, come on now. I got to work with Molly Ringwald on camera, and it was probably one of the hardest things for me to do, to not geek out, right? Because I grew up watching all her movies, and it was like, yeah. And she's really kind and gracious and really wonderful.
So like a lot of fans here when meeting you.
All have someone, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And, how's your day been so far? Anything interesting happen?
Yeah, Chaotic Brony, you guys know who Chaotic Brony is? He gave me this pendant he made of Celestia. And the cool thing is he made another one, and we're auctioning it off at the charity auction. And I signed a print that came along with it. So that was fun. I think my 2 favorite moments so far was I made poor Drew. You're so lovely. I saw that line up for registration, and I walked through and I pulled about 40 kids and their families and took them to the front of the line so they could get in. And we're gonna do it again after this, aren't we, Drew? Yeah, we are. And then I walked around down in the vendors hall and I gave out playing cards to some of the smaller kids, and there was some, yeah. That was fun. That was, I like that. What I really like is I really enjoy the interaction. I like talking to people. I like hearing their story. I like giving people that time. It's important. It's why I've come. Otherwise, not just, yes, sit in room, sign autographs and all the rest of it, but there has to be that human interaction for me. It's really important, I think.
Just kind of a slight off-the-wall question.
Do it.
As a voice actor and actress, having cycled through so many different characters all the time, do you find yourself accidentally slipping into those characters in normal situations? Like a voice will come up or something like that, just...
I slept into a British accent quite a lot. I started when I was 6 years old. I spoke for about 2 months in a British accent, drove my mother nuts. Mommy, can I have that lollipop? Mommy, can I have that? She's like, Mommy, but you don't love me. Yeah, so I'm probably going to do that a little bit. Yeah, I play with my voice. I just have fun with it. I sing. Yeah, I kind of go in and out of voices. I just finished doing a dubbing project where I was an 11-year-old, 10-year-old skater boy. And so I find myself sometimes, unfortunately, my children's chagrin, slipping into that voice, Well, you're such a noob. Stop being such a noob. And they're like, Mom, talk in your real voice. Right? The eye roll's already started. Any other questions? Yeah.
What do you think of the flag?
The flag. Oh, the Brony flag. Well, let me look at it, because I did not even know that it was there. That's kind of showing you my day too. I flew in yesterday, and boy, my arms tired. Oh, cool. Now, where is this from?
That is from Columbus, Ohio, the flag lady. She custom made it off of a request from me to basically recreate the flag of Equestria design.
Oh, you got, see, there comes the accent now. You've got a lot of time on your hands.
She does.
Flag lady in Columbus, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's gorgeous. I'm blown away by all the art and all the kind of the shoot off, spin off, whatever you call it, artistic endeavors that the show was inspired. It's brilliant.
For all intents and purposes, you can consider it your flag since technically you're playing as Celestia.
It's my flag.
Well, you can't take it home with you.
We'll make another one. Be sure to send it to you.
All right, there you go.
You pay the $420.
No, I don't want you paying any money to do anything like that for me. But you know what I would like to do is take a picture of it with you guys. Okay?
That's fine.
Yeah,
Great.
I'd love to do that.
We
It's
could
gorgeous.
probably do one more question. Nobody wants that responsibility.
Well, at the risk of kind of going into a more political aspect of things.
Yeah.
We've seen in the last year, and feel free not to answer this by all means, but
Yeah.
in the past year, we've seen a lot of cons, go under. And this by far has been one of the more successful cons, being 3 years running, or at least 3 cons running.
Yeah.
Do you feel that the ones, I'm not sure which ones you've been picked for or whatever, or signed on for and then had to cancel, but do you feel that, we should just stop with all that, the fandom's getting too crazy, people trying to things they don't really
No. Well,
understand?
here's what I think it is. It's a business model, right? You're event planning. This is called event planning, right? So if you're gonna go hold an event, it's like a wedding. That's usually the first big event that most people actually plan for themselves if they choose to get married. There's a lot that goes into it, and these things cost money, and people want money up front and all the rest of it. And I'm not talking, even for the simple fact of us to come here. Yes, we're flown and we're put up. But I had flew my mother out from Toronto at a cost of $950 to babysit the kids. Because if I had come down with my children, it would have been an extra $2,000 for all of us to come down here and go home. So they ain't cheap, right? And as well, you want to have numbers, right? You want people to buy things, because the more they do contribute back into the pot, then the more you can have. So I think people who tried to have the conventions, and some of them that were problematic, I don't believe they went into it saying we're doing this so we'll fail. I think everyone had and always has the best intentions. It's just not for everyone to plan an event of this scope or size. And, these folks, this is the 3rd time doing it, and even the first time around there were issues, right? And even this time I'm sure there's things they'll learn and do differently. But they're willing to learn. They're doing so much right that so I think planning a con is not for the weak-hearted or the feeble-minded, or it's not a part-time job, it's a full-time. And I think that takes a lot of people off guard. And also I think, people were like, hey, let's invite everybody. You can't invite everybody and expect to turn any sort of a profit. You can't. You can't. So, and it's not to be, fair. I mean, for us to come down too, I take time off of my other work, and people, it's not like I have to book out through my agency and make sure there's nothing else going on, and I miss records, I have to make sure those producers are okay, and I know Lee was working right up to late last night, which is why he took the red eye to come in to see everybody. So he's running on fumes today, but he really wants to be here. But he was able at least to get a flight. I mean, Vancouver's about as far away from Baltimore as you can get, right? Unless we're going from Australia or somewhere else, right? So that's even farther. But I'm talking about from North America. So it takes a lot of planning. So I think it's good that some people are being cautious, and also I think the conventions themselves need to find what their identity is, so they're all different, so it doesn't dilute the idea of why you're all getting together, right? Equestria LA, the cool thing about that's right, kind of in Disneyland, that's kind of cool, that's kind of different. It's got the West Coast vibe. This is very East Coast. It's got a lot of different things to offer. There's some in the middle of the country or further south, and they have their own flair and stuff on it. And I think that's what will give cons success, is when they can really stamp their identity strong. And I think some people are still trying to figure that out.
Thank you.
Right. Well, that about wraps up this session. We're unfortunately out of time. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Those are
Guys,
great questions.
can you get a round of applause?
Thank
And thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, I gotta go pull kids from the line. Let's go do this, Drew.